chemicals to see if the presence that are not safe for consumption. For instance, like arsenic, we would test for like high nitrate content. It depends on where they're located. High nitrate content could also indicate that you probably have contamination, or you could probably have sewage seeping in. It depends on where the well is located. You know, some of them are located near homes, and probably their septic is not built to spec, so they have leaks. So you'll have a high nitrate content in those areas.
All right, so help me out here. So let's say that you realize that you've tested and you have a high nitrate content. What's the procedure after that?
Well, basically, one of the first things you do, it depends on if you have spike in certain levels, you'll shut down the well, and then you would do more testing. If I go out and I have certain handheld equipment that would give me indicators. If I go out and I realize that they're too high, or they're above the desired levels, I'll probably liaise with the manager, and then a decision would be made. Then, if needs be, we'd contact the Bureau of Standards or the necessary persons, and then further testing would be done to verify that what my find is accurate and that the equipment is not really faulty. So that's one of the things we're doing. And if it is that it's working accurately, the next step would be to shut down the water source, the well, whatever is it, and then further actions will be taken after that.
Because it's always safety first.
Safety first, right.
Very important point, definitely so. So in terms of the recent quality inspections that you conducted, what are you free to tell us concerning any recent findings? Is everything on the level? Is everything up and up?
Well, basically, most persons will be concerned with the cabbage well. We have had persons on the media or Facebook going around saying the water content is, for instance, salty, but up to last week I personally went and did a test and matching prior results, because some of it is tests have been done over a period of time and the results are matching those that we had before. But to be on the safe side, just a week ago the manager also instructed to get the lab involved, and we went and we took some samples, so we're still awaiting the results for those samples. But we're doing everything in our powers to monitor and make sure that whatever water is come or sent to the homes is up to standard.
And that's a very important point, and I love the fact that you mentioned the collaboration with the Ministry of Health and the Bureau of Standards as well, just to double check. And of course, they have their own safety mechanisms in place. You're making sure that everything is up to standard. One more question for you before I seek to engage Mr. Carter, who's very quiet, unusually so today. But one more question for you as we continue talking about the testing, quality testing, frequency of the testing. How regularly is that done?
Testing, we try to do tests. In certain tests, we try to do on a monthly basis. Certain tests would be done, sporadically. You go to make sure that, you do random testing as well. Another thing I must say, as of late, we have partnered with the Ministry of Environment. They're very instrumental in some of the things that we're doing. We're moving down in terms of technology as well. We have actually installed some new monitors to actually monitor the wells real time.
Give me some more details, please.
Well, in terms of technology, we have app on our phone that actually I could just log on and see actually what is going on in the well at real time. If I travel from here, any part of the world, we could go on and monitor and make sure that everything is actually where it's supposed to be. So we don't have to wait until like once a month, or monitoring is constantly going on. at these wells.
So you've got the apps, you've got the results coming through on the apps that give you the measurements that you're looking for.
Right.
All right, I saw the look that Kurt gave you a little while ago when you spoke of technology. You feeling a little jealous, Kurt?
No, I'm playing really good so far. Not at all.
Okay, great. So he's given us a really good sense of what's going on so far with respect to quality inspection. I want you to give us a sense of what's going on with respect to works. As I mentioned before, we're in the middle of the hurricane season.
Yeah.
And I know that in previous discussions with both of you, you did mention that when it rains heavily, that makes your job a little more difficult.
Yes.
And we've noticed, thankfully, we've been having a little more frequent rain recently. But I know that, again, hurricane season, we generally have lots of heavy rains. What are you doing to prepare for that?
Well, basically, with for the hurricane season, if I must start from the top, the island water supply comes from two main sources, which is groundwater, the wells, and surface water, which is the springs like Green Hill, Wingfield, Franklin, Stonefort, Phillips, all those intakes. About 80% of the supply is well water, 20% is surface water, like in the aquifer, the Bastia aquifer, etc., where we have those pumps, what we call them. The island is divided into three parts, three areas, which is rural east, rural west, and Bastia. Bastia including like Bird Rock, the Southeast Peninsula, Frigate Bay, and those areas. And each one of those areas is headed by a foreman. And then he filter down where you have districts. We have 8 districts where you have an overseer is in charge of those 8 districts. So when something happened in that area, in that district, that's the go-to person. So we go to that person. That's what we have it filtered down to. We have a disaster plan, which is updated annually. And that plan actually outlined and taken care before a storm or after a storm. We have the Natural Disaster Mitigation Council that is put together, comprised of basically permanent secretaries and heads of the department, different departments, and non-government organization also. The council manages disasters including storms, hurricane, whatever, those kind of stuff when they come along yearly. The manager of the water department is a member of that same council. So, we have everything flow through him and filter down through us as we go. Council activate, and it means that this before storm or after a storm, the water department will start putting certain plans together where we have to have tools, we have to have fuel, we have to have everything to take care of that storm in terms of pipes, fittings, shovels, picks.
I want to interject here for a little bit because you mentioned fuel. I suspect there are many people who might not realize why you need the fuel. So just explain that to me.
Well, the fuel is for all vehicles. We have to make sure all those vehicles is full up before that storm. We have to make sure all the pumps, they have generators. What have generators? We have to make sure those generators is full up because after the storm we mightn't have electricity. So we have to switch to those generators where we have generators by those wells. So after the storm we usually try to fill all the tanks or the reservoir, fill all of them before the storm. We shut them down close to the storm, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours before the storm hit, full them, shut them down. The reason for that, we don't want to leave it on and everybody have water, but if there's a storm, you have a landslide, you have a tree, might come down and break a pipe or something, that tank will just run empty. Okay. So we don't want that. So we shut down that tank. If there's a broken pipe after the storm, we could just easily go do that repairs 4 hours after everybody have back water. So we make it easy like that. On that, we always try to tell people, even in the household, catch some water before the storm. So
it's interesting that you mention that because we are talking about hurricane preparedness, but I think that point is important generally around the clock because we never really know when emergencies can happen. Obviously with a hurricane we'll get the warning so we know it's coming and you have your plans in place. But recently I was interfacing with a customer through Facebook. I think it was Saturday that we had an emergency outage in the Frigate Bay area. And one of the things that was mentioned by that person, which it really hit home for me, is that there was no water for a while because of the emergency.
Yeah.
But then he expressed to me that he had to travel with his family. He had to board a flight, and he needed the water to return. So I did what I could in order to find out how quickly it would come back and interface with him. But realistically, I think that for those of us who might not be in hotels, it's still important for us to just keep water on hand, because we'll never know when an emergency takes place. And that's really where you come in.
Right. Well, for a household, somebody have to have water to drink. If there's a storm, we don't know how bad that storm, these days you're having this thing Cat 5, Category 5.
Regularly.
So that's like, almost seem like it's going to be a norm now.
Yeah.
So, we don't know how bad that a storm could hit us. So we have to prepare ourselves, even not in the household, to have drinking water for each person, after that storm,
Well, you guys are
I could,
doing a lot.
I could even add, even in terms of the disaster preparedness as well for the department, one thing we also do, as Kurt said, in terms of fuel, we have some of our vehicles strategically placed. In terms of, the access roads might be damaged. So, I leave St. Paul's, Kurt is in Basel, he might not be able to drive to St. Paul's to get access to me. So we have guys who position around the island, a team. So the guys could actually do some of the repairs in St. Paul's, mobilize and move around. We also have the vehicles strategically placed so we could go around. One of the first thing you need after this time is information. What infrastructure is damaged, what is up and running. You might be in an area that doesn't need any kind of repairs, so the water could go back on just like that. So if the access roads are down, probably the phones lines might be down, communication might be another problem. So if I have a vehicle strategically, I could go to the other work guys and we could mobilize and we could see what's required to be done, and we could actually take care of it. And then, by the time we already get the repairs or whatever done, the information would have already been transferred to the necessary persons in charge. So that's one of the things we do as well. It's not just to we are prepared, but then you still have to have a plan on how you're going to execute the plan. If all the vehicles are parked up at the office, what would happen?
Right.
That's so strategically. That's one of the things we do as well.
And after that, after this storm, we have a command center, at the office, which the manager is who in charge or chairs that proceedings in terms of anything that happened. So we wait for that green light from him, and then we proceed in that way going forward. All the staff, and we get going in terms of what we're going to do right after that storm. So it's like almost, you could say, all hands on deck. Basically, we always tell everybody, families first after a storm, because if your family is maybe injured or something happened, you have to take care of home first. But, right after that, we want you, as much persons, to come out to execute and get that water back on track.
Definitely so, and that makes sense as well. A couple of thoughts came to mind as I listened to you gentlemen. The first is obviously if you were planning for contingencies, very good plan of course to have the vehicles displaced throughout the island. The first thing that came to my mind is the coordination with not only the management agencies, as you indicated, Kurt, but also with public works, because to me if roads are impassable, then there is that level of connectivity that you will need even within the Ministry of Public Infrastructure itself to ensure that the infrastructure is, let's say, accessible, or at least you can check it, you can get to it, and you can make sure that service is restored as quickly as possible. The other thing is, in terms of the restoration time, you mentioned Category 5 and you triggered my mind right back to that Category 5 that we had some years ago when I said it felt like 1,000 minute men were pitter-pattering on my roof because I really thought it would have lifted off based on that storm. In terms of your recovery time, experiences if you were with the department at that time, back to that time, what was that like?
Well, the recovery time as from surface water is different to the groundwater. It's a complete different, because the guys now have to go to the hillside by those intakes. As I said earlier, when we have heavy rain, it's really challenging for us. We have a lot of landslide, all those intakes full right up. So you almost sometimes you're not seeing any. So and it only take manpower to go and clear those intakes. It could take 2 to 3 days. Sometimes we just clear certain area just to try to get back that water back on the line. But then we have to go back tomorrow, throw it off again and continue. It's a continued process daily before we could get it back to normal. Now the groundwater is easy, like I said, with generators. We could, and most of those is on lowland, especially in the Bastia area, from the valley. So if you have those generators up and running, we could just put the generators on. If you don't have the electricity, and pump that water to those tanks in those areas, and we good to go with that. So basically, people could get back water maybe 4 to 6 hours.
Okay.
After that storm, after that calm.
Great.
Yes.
Curious to know if, after the passage of a tropical storm or even a hurricane, the frequency of calls that you get for quality inspections increases.
Well, a lot of times it's instantly. It all depends on the area, because most times we already had, like Kurt said, we already filled the major storage tanks. So at that time, you have clean water there sitting. You would only have complaints most times, those who probably might be feeding directly from the intakes. So that's where you would find most. But in most areas, you won't have any calls instantly. Or if, for instance, Kurt and his team, they do repairs in terms of the mains, and maybe the area they work in, they have some kind of seepage of stuff going into that main line. Some persons might be getting some dirty water, maybe for a short period of time. One thing we try to do at times, depends on where the guys are working. If there's a fire hydrant, or if there's a dead end, or what we call a washout, they would open it until the water is clear before they actually turn it on. So sometimes we try to do a little bit of house cleaning before you actually get to you. But sometimes, in the rush of trying to get back the water, some stuff would actually bypass us, but at the same time, during the same time, you also encourage the homes, if you're not, if you're drinking the water, you boil it, or you run the taps for a bit till the water clears up, and then you consume it. Because even after a storm as well, we still do our treatment in terms of chlorine. There are times shortly after a storm, like I said, depends on where you're located, we might have to increase the dosage a bit to kill more of the bacteria that we won't be seeing. So you might have a little taste. The taste might not be that desirable at the time, but it's because of safety. Until everything is under control, then everything will go back to normal. So shortly after a storm, some customers, you just have to understand it's an emergency. Things might not be how they usually are, but bear with us. If they themselves do the preparations, have water storage at home, it would give us even a little more time to get the necessary works done and get the service back on at the quality as if the storm had never passed.
And that's what I like to hear. I'm sure that the customers like to hear that as well.
Right, because like as I said, after that storm, we must do those assessments. We must do evaluation, and we have to do this island-wide. We have to do this island-wide to make sure everything is okay. As Sean said earlier, the water, you have all kind of thing blowing in the air, could get into those tanks sometimes, because we have we have an open tank system there. So we have to do that testing, got to make sure everything is okay before we just go and give that water to the public.
Well, safety first.
Yes.
And that's important. And the contingencies, yes.
Yeah. In certain areas as well, for instance, intakes that feed Bastia, like Old Road, we actually have to hike from Old Road, walk the whole entire pipeline to make sure there's no break. So
right.
That would take quite a few hours itself just to get that aspect of it done. Just actually walk. Sometimes trees are falling. The mountains might be, there's erosion, landslides. So sometimes it's difficult to actually tell if the landslide has destroyed the pipe in that area. So it would take some time. So that's why the public itself, the homes, they have to be prepared. Do not depend on the water service to give you water right away. You yourself, the onus is on you. Whatever storage you could have at home, get some storage that could serve you a few days through the storm until we get our service back online.
Well, I have to say, listening to you guys, you're giving me some ideas, because I feel like a lot of the work that you do is really behind the scenes, and people don't really understand until you get an opportunity to say that. So I wish I could be a fly on the wall. Hopefully we don't have a hurricane this season that prompts me to actually deliver on my promise to be a fly on the wall.
Another thing I must say before, even though now we don't want the general public to get the false sense of security. In terms right now we've been getting a lot of rainfall. People still call and complain and ask why we're turning off the water. Even though we've been getting a lot of rainfall, for instance at the wells, it takes some time for that water to go down to the aquifer, to actually recharge the aquifer.
Maybe about a month.
All right. And not only that, a lot of it goes to runoff. Some people say, oh, build more storage. You could build more storage, but just like anything else, water in a storage has a shelf life. So you capture the water, it ain't be used, it goes to waste again.
Fair enough.
So even though we're getting the rain, the general public still try to get some form of storage at home, and don't get the false sense of security as if the load shedding won't stop, or the rationing, I must say. We still will be rationing water, because, like I said, it helps the wells to get recharged, to keep the aquifers at a safe level, so that we do not overpump and destroy the well. Then we won't be able to get no water from that.
And I hate to leave it at this point, but obviously we're going to have to continue this discussion another time, because there's always so much to talk about. But I do want to thank you for joining me today for another edition of The Waterline here on ZIZ. I'm Jamie Morris, Acting Communications Officer in the Ministry of Public Infrastructure at AL, saying thank you for joining us, and join us next time on The Waterline.
Water is life, 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 life. Water is life, life.